Hello friends and welcome back to our channel. Today we are diving into the rich tapestry of a feminist thought, exploring the works of some of its most influential critics. So grab your favorite note and let's embark on this journey together. Our journey begins with Margaret Fuller. Margaret Fuller, a pioneering feminist thinker of the 19th century, challenged societal norms with her groundbreaking writings. Her influential work, Women in the 19th Century, advocated for women's intellectual and spiritual equality. Fuller's impassioned advocacy paved the way for future generations of feminists, inspiring them to assert their rights and demand recognition. As a writer, editor, and a social reformer, she played a crucial role in shaping early feminist discourse in America. Her legacy continues to inspire scholars and activists striving for gender equality worldwide. Now let's see her important works. First is Women in the 19th Century, 1845, Fuller's most renowned work. This book is considered a foundational text of early feminist literature. In it, she argues for women's equality in education, employment, and societal roles, challenging prevailing notion of gender roles and advocating for women's autonomy and agency. Next is the great lawsuit Man vs. Men, Woman vs. Women, 1843. This essay, also known as Woman in the 19th Century, the Great Lawsuit, expands on themes introduced in Fuller's letter book. She critiques the restrictive gender norms of her time and calls for women to assert their rights and fulfill their potential. Next important work is Women and the 19th Century, essay 1844. In this essay, Fuller examines the societal constraint placed on women's intellectual and spiritual growth. She argues for women's right to self-fulfillment and self-expression, challenging traditional ideas about femininity and womanhood. Next is Letter on Literature and Art, 1849. Although not exclusively focused on feminism, this collection of Fuller's letters includes discussion of women's roles in literature and society. Next important work is Memoirs of Margaret Fuller Ossoli, posthumously published 1852. This autobiographical work provides insight into Fuller's life and intellectual development. While not explicitly feminist, it offers glimpses into her struggles against societal expectations and her commitment to advocating for women's rights. Next on our list is Mary Wollstonecraft, often held as a mother of modern feminism. In A Vindication of the Rights of Women, Wollstonecraft eloquently argued for women's education and social independence. Her revolutionary ideas sparked intense debate and paved the way for the women's rights movement of the 19th and 20th century. Now let's see Mary Wollstonecraft's important works. First is A Vindication of the Rights of a Woman, 1792, Wollstonecraft's most famous work. This groundbreaking treatise argues for the education and social equality of women. It critiques prevailing notions of women's inferiority and advocates for intellectual and moral development, laying the foundation of a modern feminism. Next is A Vindication of the Rights of a Man. While not exclusively focused on women's rights, this pamphlet by Wollstonecraft defends the principles of French Revolution and critiques the monarchy and aristocracy. Next is Letters Written in Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. This travelogue by Wollstonecraft explores themes of freedom, nature, and society. While not explicitly feminist, it offers insight into Wollstonecraft's intellectual and philosophical views, which influenced her later feminist writings. Next is Maria, or the Wrongs of Woman, unfinished novel posthumously published in 1798. This novel by Wollstonecraft depicts the struggles of its protagonist Maria against the oppressive social and legal constraint placed on women. It highlights themes of women's rights, education, and autonomy, reflecting Wollstonecraft's feminist beliefs. Next is Thoughts on the Education of Daughters, 1787. In this pamphlet, Wollstonecraft discusses the importance of education for girls and young women. She argues for a more enlightened approach to female education, advocating for intellectual rigor and moral development rather than mere ornamentation. Next is J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill, a philosopher and advocate for women's rights. Contributed significantly to feminist theory with his essay The Subjective of Women. In this groundbreaking work, Mill challenged the traditional patriarchal views of women as a subordinate to men, advocating for legal and social reforms to achieve gender equality. His impassioned plea for women's suffrage resonated deeply with the feminists of his time and continues to inspire activists today. Now let's see J.S. Mill's important works in detail. First is the Subjections of Women, 1869. In this seminal essay, Mill argues for gender equality and women's rights, advocating for its legal and social reform, dismantle the patriarchal structure that oppresses women. Next important work is On Liberty, 1859. While not exclusively focused on feminism, this influential work by Mill defends the principles of individual liberty, including freedom of thought and expression. Next important work is The Subjection of Women, 1869. In this groundbreaking essay, Mill critiques the legal, social, and economic inequalities faced by women in Victorian society. Next is Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf, a pioneering figure in modernist literature, made profound contribution to feminist discourse through her seminal essay A Room of One's Own. In this thought-provoking work, Woolf examined the ways in which women's creativity has been stifled throughout history due to economic and social constraint. Her call for women to have both financial independence and the physical space for their creative endeavors remains a rallying cry for feminists striving for equality in its arts. Now let's see Virginia Woolf's important works in detail. First is A Room of One's Own, 1929. This seminal feminist essay explored the relationship between women and literature, arguing that women need financial independence and space of their own to pursue creative endeavors. Next is Genius. In this extended essay, Woolf reflects on the roots of the war and patriarchy, exploring the connection between materialism, misogyny, and imperialism. She calls for women to resist the forces of a violence operation, advocating for new, more inclusive vision of society based on cooperation and understanding. Next is Orlando, a Biography, 1928. While not explicitly feminist, this novel challenges traditional notions of gender and identity. Through the fantastical journey of its protagonist Orlando, who lives for centuries and changes gender along the way, Woolf explored the fluidity and complexity of gender roles, inviting readers to question societal norms and expectations. Next important work is Mrs. Dalloway, 1925. In this modernist masterpiece, Woolf dwells into the interior lives of her character, including the titular Mrs. Dalloway as the navigates the social constraints of early 20th century. Next is To the Lighthouse, 1927. This introspective novel examines the dynamic of family and gender relations, focusing on the Ramsay family's annual trips to their summer home. Next is Simone de Beauvoir. The influential French existentialist philosopher delved into the complexities of a gender and identity in her magnum opus, The Second Sex. Beauvoir's groundbreaking analysis of a women's operation as rooted in social, cultural, and economic structure challenged prevailing notions of femininity and masculinity. Now let's see the Simone de Beauvoir's important works in detail. First is The Second Sex, 1949. This groundbreaking work is considered one of the foundational texts of modern feminism. In it, Beauvoir explored the social, culture, and existential dimension of a women's operation, arguing that women have been historically defined and confined by men. Next important work is The Ethics of Ambiguity, 1947. While not exclusively focused on feminism, this philosophical treatise explored themes of freedom, responsibility, and existentialism. Beauvoir argues that individuals must embrace their freedom and accept responsibility for their choices, challenging traditional notions of gender and social roles. Next important work is Memoirs of a Dutiful Daughter, 1958. In this autobiographical work, Beauvoir reflects on her upbringing and intellectual development, offering insight into her early experiences with the gender inequality and societal expectations. Next is The Coming of Age, 1970. In this philosophical exploration of aging and identity, Beauvoir examines the ways in which society constructs gender roles and expectations across the lifespan. Next is The Mandarins, 1954. This novel, inspired by Beauvoir's experience with the existentialist movement and her relationship with the fellow intellectuals, offers a fictionalized account of post-World War II Persian society. Through the lives of its character, Beauvoir explored themes of politics, love, and existential angst, providing insight into the complexities of women's lives and relationships in a male-dominated world. Next is Kate Millett, a pioneering feminist theorist, shook the foundations of patriarchy with her provocative work Sexual Politics. In this seminal text, Millett critiqued the ways in which power operates within sexual relationships and societal institutions, exposing the inherent inequalities that perpetuate gender-based operation. Her intersectional analysis paved the way of more inclusive and nuanced understanding of feminism. Now let's see important works by Kate Millett. Friends, I forgot to add Sexual Politics, 1970. Please note that. Next important work is The Politics of Cruelty, 1994. In this provocative work, Millett explored the connection between violence, power, and oppression. Drawing on her feminist analysis, she examined the ways in which cruelty and domination are used to maintain hierarchical systems of inequality. Next is Flying, 1974. This memoir by Millett offers a personal reflection on her experience as a feminist activist and writer. Next is Sita. In this experimental novel, Millett reimagines the Ramayana from a feminist perspective, focusing on the character of Sita. Through Sita's story, Millett explores themes of gender, power, and resistance, challenging traditional interpretation of the epic, and the offering a feminist critique of patriarchal norms. Next is the Looney Bin Trip, 1990. In this candid memoir, Millet chronicles her experiences with the mental illness and the psychiatric system. Next is Judith Butler, a leading figure in queer theory and gender studies, revolutionized feminist thought with her groundbreaking work Gender Trouble. In this influential text, Butler challenged the binary conception of a gender, arguing that it is a performative rather than inherent. Through her exploration of a gender performativity, Butler opened up new possibilities for understanding and subverting traditional gender norms. Now let's see important works by Judith Butler. First is Gender Trouble, Feminism and Subversion of Identity, 1990. This influential book by Judith Butler revolutionized feminist theory with its exploration of a gender performativity. Butler argues that gender is not an inherent or a stable identity but rather a social construct that is enacted through repeated performances. Next important work is Bodies That Matter on this discursive limits of sex, 1993. Building on the ideas introduced in Gender Trouble, Butler further explores the relationship between language power and bodily existence. Next is Undoing Gender, 2004. In this collection of essays, Butler continues her interrogations of gender norms and their effects on individuals and communities. Next is Ellen Showalter. Ellen Showalter, a prominent feminist literary critic, brought attention to the voices of women writers throughout history in her seminal work, A Literature of Their Own. Showalter's feminist literary theory highlighted the ways in which women's experience and perspectives have been marginalized within the literary canon. By advocating for the feminist literary tradition, Showalter paved the way for more inclusive and diverse literary landscape. Now let's see some important works by Ellen Showalter. First is A Literature of Their Own, British women novelist from Bronte to Lessing, 1977. In this groundbreaking work, Showalter examined the contribution of a British women novelist to literary history. She challenges the patriarchal biases of the literary canon and argues for the recognition of women writers as significant cultural figures. Next is The Female Malady, Women, Madness and English Culture, 1830 to 1985. In this influential study, Showalter explored the historical construction of a female madness in English culture. She examines the ways in which mental illness has been gendered and pathologized, tracing the evolution of psychiatric theories and treatment for women. Next is Towards a Feminist Poetics, 1979. In this seminal essay, Showalter lays the groundwork for feminist literary criticism by articulating a feminist approach to literary analysis. She argues for the importance of considering gender as a central category of analysis and explores the ways in which women's writing has been marginalized and devalued within literary studies. Next important work is The New Feminist Criticism, Essay on Women Literature and Theory, 1985, co-edited with Sandra Gilbert. In this influential anthology, Showalter and Gilbert bring together essays by leading feminist critics to explore key issues in feminist literary theory. Next important work is Historical Epidemics and Modern Culture, 1997. While not exclusively focused on feminism, this book by Showalter examines the phenomena of historical epidemics in modern culture. She explored the ways in which hysteria has been used to define, control women's bodies and behaviors from the Victorian era to the present day. Next is Hélène Chias. Hélène Chias, a French feminist theorist and writer, explored the concept of a écriture feminine in her influential essays and play. Hélène argued for a feminine writing style that celebrates fluidity, creativity, and embodiment, challenging the patriarchal structure of language and representation. Through her concept of a écriture feminine, Hélène invited women to reclaim their voices and reshape the literary landscape. Now let's see some important works by Hélène. First is The Laugh of a Medusa, 1975. The seminal essay of Hélène is considered a foundational text of a French feminist theory. In it, Hélène celebrates women's writing as a subversive act that challenges patriarchal norms and structure. She calls for women to embrace their creativity and sexuality, reclaiming their voices and bodies from male domination. Next is Coming to Writing and Other Essays, 1991. In this collection of essays, Hélène reflects on the relationship between writing and identity, exploring themes of language, desire, and subjectivity. She examines the ways in which writing can be a form of self-discovery and liberation, offering insight into the transformative potential of literature. Next is The Newly Born Women, 1975, co-authored with Catherine Clement. In this collaborative work, Chias and Clement explore the concept of a female subjectivity and its relationship to language and power. Next is Stigma, Escaping Text, 1998. In this experimental text, Chias blends autobiography fiction and theory to explore themes of embodiment, memory, and trauma. She reflects on her own experiences as a Jewish woman growing up in Algeria and the ways in which her identity has been shaped by language and history. Next is Portrait of a Jacques Derrida as a Young Jewish Saint, 2001. In this autobiographical essay, Hélène offers a loving tribute to her friend and colleague, the philosopher Jacques Derrida. She reflects on their shared intellectual journey and the ways in which Derrida's work has influenced her own thinking. Next is Sandra and Susan Gilbert, a dynamic duo of feminist literary scholars. Co-authored The Mad Woman in the Attic, a groundbreaking study of women writers and madness in literature. In this influential work, the Gilberts analyze the ways in which women authors have been marginalized and pathologized throughout history, shedding the light on the systemic biases that shape literary representation. Their meticulous research continues to inspire feminist literary scholarship. Now let's see some important works by Sandra and Susan Gilbert. First is The Mad Woman in the Attic, the woman writer and the 19th century literary imagination, 1979, co-authored with Sandra Gilbert. This influential work examines the portrayal of women in 19th century literature and the ways in which female writers navigate their challenging patriarchal norms. Gilbert and Gobar coined the term the mad woman in the attic to describe the cultural archetype of the female writer as a marginalized and oppressed figure. Next important work is No Man's Land, the place of the woman writer in the 20th century, 1989, co-authored with Sandra Gilbert. Building on the insights of their earlier work, Gilbert and Gobar explore the evolving role of a women writer in the 20th century. They examine the ways in which women writers have confronted and subverted traditional gender roles, challenging readers to rethink their assumptions about literary authority and creativity. Next is the Norton Anthology of Literature by Women, the tradition in which 1985 co-edited with Sandra Gilbert. This groundbreaking anthology showcases the work of women writers from diverse cultural and historical backgrounds. Gilbert and Gubar bring together poetry, fiction, drama, and essays by women authors spanning centuries and contents, offering readers to comprehensive overview of the tradition of women's writing in English. Next is the War of the Words, the politics of the language in revolutionary America, 1996, co-authored with Sandra Gilbert. In this interdisciplinary study, Gilbert and Gubar explore the ways in which language has been used as a tool of power and resistance in American history. They examine the role of a language in shaping political ideologies and cultural identities, highlighting the ways in which marginalized groups have used language to assert their rights and challenge dominant narratives. Next is Masterpiece Theatre, an academic melodrama, 2017, co-authored with Sandra Gilbert. In this satirical novel, Gilbert and Gubar offer a playful yet incisive critique of academia and literary criticism, drawing on their own experience as scholars and writers. They lampoon the pretension and power struggles of the academic world while also highlighting the joys and challenges of intellectual pursuit. Next is Shulamit Firestone, a radical feminist thinker, challenged traditional notions of gender and sexuality in her influential work, The Dialectic of Sex. Firestone argued for the abolition of the traditional family structure and the development of reproductive technologies to liberate women from the burdens of biological reproduction. Now let's see some important works by Shulamit Firestone. First is The Dialectic of Sex, The Case of a Feminist Revolution, 1970. This groundbreaking book by Shulamit Firestone is considered a foundational text of second wave feminism. In it, Firestone argues that the root of a women's oppression lies in the biological and social institution of reproduction. She calls for a radical restructuring of society, including the abolition of nuclear family and the development of reproductive technologies to achieve gender equality and liberation. Next is Airless Spaces, 1998. In this autobiographical work, Firestone reflects on her experience with the mental illness and psychiatric system. She explored themes of stigma, isolation, and resilience, offering insight into the challenges faced by individuals with mental health issues. Next is the women's rights movement in the United States, 1968, co-authored with Anne Coidet. In this early work, Firestone and Anne provide a comprehensive overview of a history of the women's rights movement in the United States. They trace the development of the feminist activism from 19th century to the present day. Next is the Notes from the First Year, 1968. This anthology brings together essays, manifestos, and speeches from the first year of the women's liberation movement. Next is The Grand Coulee Dam, 1970. In this influential essay, Firestone and Coidet critique the ways in which women's bodies have been objectified, and exploited in a capitalist society. They argued that women's labor, both reproductive and productive, has been devalued and commodified, contributing to their economic and social subordination. Next is Dale Spencer. Dale Spencer, a feminist linguist and educator, examining the ways in which language reinforces gender inequalities in her groundbreaking work, Man Made Language. Spencer's analysis revealed the subtle ways in which language perpetuates patriarchal norms and biases, shaping our understanding of gender roles and identities. Through her advocacy for linguistic inclusivity and awareness, Spender paved the way for more equitable society. Now let's see some important work by Dale Spencer. First is Man Made Language, 1980. In this groundbreaking book, Dale Spencer examines the ways in which language reflects and perpetuates gender inequality. She argues that language is a tool of a power used to maintain patriarchal structure and oppress women. Man-made language offers insight into the ways in which language shapes our perception of our gender and influences our interactions with the other, challenging readers to rethink their assumption about language and identity. Next is Women of Ideas and What Men Have Done to Them, from Oprah to Andrew Rich, 1982. In this comprehensive study, Spencer explored the lives of a work of a women writer throughout history. She highlights the achievements of women intellectuals who have been marginalized or erased from mainstream narratives, offering insight into the challenges they faced and the contribution they made to culture and society. Next is Feminist Theories. 3 Centuries of Key Women Thinkers, 1983. In this seminal work, Spencer introduced readers to the lives and ideas of key figures in feminist theory. She provides biographical sketches and critical analysis of women thinkers from the 17th century to the present day, tracing the development of a feminist through thought over time. Next is Andrew Rich. Andrew Rich, a celebrated poet and feminist theorist, explored the intersections of gender equality, identity, and politics of her influential poetry and essays. Andrew Rich's work, such as Diving into the Wreck, dwell into the complexities of a female experience, challenging traditional notions of femininity and power. Her poetic visions continues to inspire readers to confront their dismantle oppressive structures, envisioning a more just and equitable world. Now let's see some important work by Andrew Rich. First is Diving into the Wreck, 1973. This collection of poetry by Andrew Rich is considered a landmark work of feminist literature. Rich explores themes of gender identity and the power, drawing on a personal experience and social critique to challenge patriarchal norms and conventions. Next is Of Woman Born, Motherhood as an Experience and Institution, 1976. In this influential work of a feminist theory, Andrew Rich reflects on the experience of motherhood and its social significance. Next important work is On Lies, Secret and Science, Selected Prose, 1966. 1978-1979. This collection brings together essays, speeches and interviews by Andrew Rich from the 1960s to 1970s. Rich explores a wide range of topics including poetry, politics and feminism, offering incisive critique of sexism, racism and homophobia. Next is The Dream of a Common Language, 1978. In this collection of poetry, Andrea Rich explores themes of love, identity, and political engagement. She celebrates the power of a language to create community and connections, while also acknowledging its limitations and contradictions. Next important work is A Wild Patience Has Taken Me This Far. Poems 1978, 1981, 1981. In this collection, Andrich Rich reflects on the passage of time and challenges of living in the world marked by injustice and inequality. She celebrates the resilience of the human spirit and the power of collective action, offering hope and inspiration in the face of adversity. Friends, as we conclude our exploration of a feminist literary theory and its influential critics, let us reflect on the enduring legacy of the visionary thinkers. From the Margaret Fuller to Andrew Rich, each of these luminaries has left an indelible mark on our understanding of gender, power, and literature. May their insights continue to guide us in the quest for more inclusive and equitable society. Thank you for joining us on this enlightening journey. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep challenging the status quo. Thanks for watching and all the best for your exam.